Good evening and welcome to the Common Council meeting for July 10th, 2012. Clerk will call the roll.
Williams. Here. Riley. Fowler. Anderson.
Present.
Hanson.
Present.
Jarvis. Here. Sedlacek.
Present.
Markham.
Here.
Let the record show we have a quorum for a Common Council meeting. Next item is the pledge. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is the acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting held June 26, 2012. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved. Second, Alder Anderson.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is the audience portion where we ask you to sign in and be recognized by the chair. This is where you get to talk and we get to listen. Tonight, Jeff Tauschek signed in. Jeff?
Real quick, I have a proposition for all the council members, anybody else. Saturday is Mill Street Festival. The local Optimist Club are looking for individuals to sit in the dunk tank for 30 minutes. I sent out an email earlier. You're welcome. If you're interested, contact me, and I'll get you in touch with the person for 30 minutes, or I think it's 9 to 4, so they're going to have a dunk tank the entire time. I'll be in it from 10:30 to 11, I believe it is, so. If you don't want to sit in there, bring some money down and see if you can knock me in. Thank you.
So-
You don't need an hour?
Last time I did it at the high school for 30 minutes. I was in there. The line was pretty big.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Next person is Bill Emig. Bill?
Yeah, I'm hoping the third time is a charm. Still have a band concert night, August 9th. The band is Hometown Harmony. It's barber shopper night, and we're looking for a group to sell concessions. So if anyone's interested, call City Hall and leave a message with the clerk's office or me, and we'll try to work something out with you. So August 9th, we need a concessionaire at the band concerts. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We appreciate the update of information and certainly encourage people in the community to come and address the council. Moving on, item 5, presentation and acceptance of the 2011 audit report of Plymouth Utilities by Aaron Worthman, CPA partner, Public Sector Services, Baker Tilly Virgil Kraus, LLP. John, our utility director, do you want to introduce Mr. Worthman and make any comments to start with?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Worthman's credentials with Baker Tilly Virtual Kraus is he's a CPA and he's also a partner for the firm. And he's in charge of a team that came into our organization this first half of the year and audited our records and books, and has put together a report for you this evening to go through what they found and discuss the report with you. With that, I'll introduce Aaron Workman to you. Aaron?
Thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity to present the financial audit report tonight. Once again, I've inundated you with a lot of material. Just want to go through what I did give you. A couple items. One is you have the bound financial statements. You also have the management letter. What I've added tonight is I've given out a PowerPoint presentation that I'll be talking through, and then some financial statement highlights, which is this sheet here with the yellow highlights below. Basically, what these financial statement highlights are is the key points in financial metrics summarized from your financial statements. So we'll be able to talk off of the PowerPoint and then the one-page financial statement highlight summary. Looking at the PowerPoint presentation, First thing I'm going to do is go through an audit overview. You know, what exactly is an audit? What do we do as part of that audit? I'll then go through the management letter points. I'll go through the financial statement highlights. That's probably where I'm going to spend most of my time. And then lastly, I'll open it up for any questions. Our audit is performed in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Those are the standards that we're required to follow when we conduct your audit. Our audit objective is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. When we got completed with our audits, you'll see that your financial statements have received an unqualified opinion, which is also known as a clean opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as auditors. What that says is the financial statements in front of you are materially stated. Going to our management letter. This year, management letter for the most part remains unchanged. We didn't have any new comments, so the points that you see in here are the required communications that we have, and I've provided some updates to prior year points that we've had where the utilities have taken some action on some of the points we've had in the prior years. The first point you'll see is the two-way communication regarding your audit point. Basically what that does is it provides a little bit of background on what we do as part of our audit, but most importantly what it does is it urges you folks to at any time contact me directly or anyone from the audit team if you have any questions or thoughts, not just about this completed year's financial audit, but the upcoming. So at any time during the year, if you have any questions, comments, certainly feel free to contact me directly. Just a couple updates on some of the prior year comments. Again, there were no new comments this year. One is in years past, we have what we call as a redemption fund. And what that is there's segregated funds to pay off your debt service for some of your loan obligations. At year end, there's a required amount that needs to be in that account. Well, in years past, that number had been deficient. We're pleased to say that this year, that fund was adequately funded, and actually it was slightly overfunded by $137,000. So that's good. All those restricted funds were adequately funded. We've always had a comment pertaining to the annual budget preparation. In years past, the utilities would have an annual budget. However, it wasn't adopted as part of the Common Council. Well, it's our understanding that this year, meaning in 2011 in November, that utilities budget was accepted as part of the Common Council. So again, we commend the utilities and the council for taking care of that. And then lastly, what we had a point on was in regard to arbitrage. Basically, there's some rules that say because when you issue debt, it's tax exempt. There's some rules that they just want to make sure that you're not earning more on those debt proceeds than you are paying in interest. That's called arbitrage. What we had a comment that stated we thought you should check with your financial advisors because you had some older debt issues out there, just to make sure that they evaluate and make sure that you're not or haven't earned more on those unspent debt proceeds than you were paying in interest. And we're pleased to report that that study was done this year by Ehlers and Associates for the 2006 debt issue, and they came up with no liability is needed. So there was no issues there. So again, we commend the utilities for taking our comment and getting that point addressed. And lastly, the other piece of our management letter deals with internal controls. And like we've discussed in prior years, given the size of your community, in a perfect world, you'd have 20 accountants, so you could all have perfect segregation of duties, and you'd have all these control comments taken care of. However, given the fact of the size of the community, you, like other utilities, that's not feasible. So what we need to do as auditors is we just need to note where some of those segregation of duty issues are, where some improvements could be made in internal controls and things to that extent. These comments are the same as they were in the prior years. And I'm in no way saying that all of these should be cured. I'm just saying that just know there are some issues, like any utility of your size, but the thing is to know where those issues are. And then as a collective utilities, come together and determine which of these, if any, should be addressed and how they should be addressed. Any questions on the management letter before I jump into the financial statement highlights? Okay. Turning to the financial statement highlights. And again, when we talk about the utilities, we're talking about the electric, water, and the sewer utility. If we take a look at the income statement first, that's the numbers you'll see at the top. The income statement represents all the activity for the year 2011. So all activity from January 1st through December 31st of 2011. When we look at operating revenues of the electric utility, you'll see that there was a nice increase from about $21.8 million to $22.7 million. That increase is directly attributable to the increase through purchase power costs. So as your purchase power costs increase from WPPI, there's a mechanism that then allows you to pass those power cost increase through your rates, and that's what that's reflecting there. So that's what that increase is for the operating revenues. For the water utility, you'll see an increase from about $1.4 million to about $1.45 million. That's directly attributable to about a 4.6% increase in water sales in 2011. That's actually, from what I've been seeing, uncommon. A lot of utilities, due to conservation, due to the economy, sales have gone down. So it's interesting to note that there was actually an increase in sales of about 4.6%. Looking at the sewage utility, for the most part, those revenues stayed consistent. It's interesting to note that there was about a 1% decrease in gallons treated this year. So that's why you see that difference with the water utility revenues increasing and the sewer utilities, for the most part, remaining flat. Operating expenses. For the electric utility in 2010, those were about $2.1 million. Well, in 2011, those operating expenses increased to about $21.7 million. And again, as I mentioned before, the cost for that is increases in purchase power expenses from WPPI. Again, similar to other municipal utilities, that increase was actually for increases in purchase power costs of about $719,000 this year. Looking at the water utility operating expenses went from about almost $900,000 to $945,000. Well, most of that was attributable to an increase in depreciation expense. Given the plant activity over the last few years, your depreciation on that plant increases, and that's what that is reflected there. Sewage utility operating expenses of about $1.6 million increased to about $1.642. Biggest increase there is increases in employee pensions and benefits expenses. If we look at your non-operating revenues a little bit further down that income statement, what those represent for the most part is investment income. So it's any investment income on your restricted cash and investments and also your unrestricted cash and investments. That number is offset by the interest expense that you pay on your debt service. Well, you'll see that for that amount, decreased from about $70,000 down to about $22,000. That is due to an increase in interest expense due to the 2011 revenue bonds that were issued. So you had more debt taken out in 2011, which leads to higher interest expense. Capital contributions. For those that aren't familiar, capital contributions to a utility can come in a number of ways. One of the largest ways is whenever you have a customer or developer contribute infrastructure. So if you have a developer come in and put a line extension or to put in a water and sewer main, those are considered contributions. In addition, anytime TIF pays for a utility project, that's also considered a capital contribution from the municipality. So you'll see this year we had about $3.2 million worth of capital contributions. The largest reason for that increase is due to a TIF project for the Sargento project that took place. That was the biggest increase in those capital contributions. Taking a look at transfers, the tax equivalent. Every year, the utilities make a payment in lieu of taxes over to the municipality. That amount this year was $554,000, which is a small increase from the prior year of about $500,000. I've also included the statistics for sales below. You'll see that increase I mentioned before about the electric kilowatts sold, the increase in the water gallons sold, and then the slight decrease we had in the sewer gallons treated. One thing we look at when we look at the utilities is we look at the adequacy of their rates. All three utilities here, the electric, water, and sewer, are regulated by the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. They regulate those rates. And what they do is they determine a rate of return. You know, what do the utilities rates need to be set at to earn a return on those assets? So for the electric utility, the electric rate of return is authorized at about 6.4%. Those rates went in place in February of 2007. And this year, our rate of return increased from about 3.48% to 4.2%. Now, you can see when you take a look at that, that's below the 6.5% authorized, which leads us to believe that your rates are probably slightly deficient. Given that fact, the utilities applied for an electric rate increase, and that was effective January 1st of 2012. So our hope is that these new electric rates will bring that rate of return back up to the new authorized rate by the PSC of 6.25%. Taking a look at the water rate of return, their authorized rate of return by the PSC is 6.75%. Interesting to note, those rates have been in place since September of 2006. So it's been quite some time since the utilities have raised water rates. Well, if we look at that rate of return, you'll see that they decreased from about 4.15% in 2010 to 3.02%. Again, that's considerably below the 6.75%. So we would recommend that this year in 2012, utilities would take a look at their capital projects, they take a look at their operating budgets, and determine if a rate increase is warranted for the water rate. It appears, just based off this information from 2011, that more than likely a water rate increase is probably needed. Looking at the sewer rate of return, again, they have an authorized rate of return of 6.75%. Those rates have been in place since January 2009, so it's been a couple of years since the last rate increase. Well, the sewer utility also had a decrease in their rate of return from about 5.31% in 2010 to 4.73%. So again, we would recommend that the utilities take a look at the adequacy of those sewer rates in 2012 as well. One of the items that we look at, because the utilities take out debt, they have revenue debt requirements. And one of those requirements is they need to maintain a debt coverage ratio. That basically that their earnings are in excess of their debt service on an annual basis. And you'll see that that required ratio is 1.25, and the utilities easily exceed that with a 1.64 coverage. Now note, that is down from 1.95 in prior years, but again, it's still strong. It still exceeds that minimum requirement. And those electric rate increase that took place in January of 2012, that should help bring that, that required ratio up a little bit too. Looking at the balance sheet represents the utility's financial position at one point in time, which happens to be December 31st of 2011. Taking a look at unrestricted cash, you'll see there was an increase from about 9.6 million in 2010 to about 10 million. Restricted cash and investments, you'll see a decrease from about 10 million down to about 9.9 million. Now, when I talk about restricted cash and investments, those are investments that are restricted for a specific purpose. The utilities have restrictions for the redemption account, which we talked about before, which is used to pay the annual debt service on your debt. Then there's also a reserve fund, which is funds set aside to be able to make an annual debt payment in case your redemption fund was short or you didn't have enough funds in that fund. And then there's also the construction fund, which is any unspent debt issuance proceeds. And then the fourth item is the DNR replacement fund that's specific to any replacements for the wastewater treatment facility. Those are your restricted cash and investments. The receivable from TIF, you'll see that there's a significant amount of money that's receivable from the TIF given the prior 5, 6, 7, 8 years worth of TIF projects that have been taking place. You'll see that receivable has increased from about $10 million to about $12.4 million. That's attributable to the projects that took place in 2011 for TIF number 6. Other assets represent many things. They represent receivables, your inventories, things to that extent. Well, one of the biggest items that you have there is your investment in ATC. The investment in ATC, there was a $200,000 increase in that investment, so that's why you'll see that balance go from about $7.5 million to $7.7 million. So the investment in ATC, the increase in that investment, is what drives that other asset increase. Capital assets, which is your plant infrastructure, a net of related depreciation, increased from about 51 million to 58 million. Largest driver of that is your construction work in progress pertaining to the new utility building. Other liabilities, you'll see went from about 3.1 million to 3.7 million. The largest increase for that was due to construction accounts payable related to the utility building. If we look at long-term debt, you'll see an increase there. That increase is directly attributable to the issuance of the 2011 revenue bonds. One thing we like to do when we look at the balance sheet is we like to look at the adequacy of your unrestricted cash. If we look at your unrestricted cash, if we were to take a look at how many months of operating revenue do you have on hand in unrestricted cash, you'll see that we have about 4.6 months of unrestricted cash in comparison to operating revenues. Oftentimes we get asked, well, what is a healthy unrestricted cash balance? What should we try to maintain? And that marker we should shoot for is 3 to 6 months. So at 4.6 months, I'd say that's a healthy unrestricted cash position. I would anticipate with the increase in the electric rates, hopefully that unrestricted cash position will increase again. But I'd say as of right now, that 4.6 months worth of operating revenues on hand is a good, healthy metric. Last item we look at is we look at the percentage of capital assets financed through earnings. So basically, this is similar to a mortgage. If you had a mortgage, what percentage have you paid off? So if you look at the utilities in that regard, you'll see that about 57% of the plant has been paid off. The remaining portion still has outstanding debt to be paid. We like to look for something around 50%, no less than 50%. So again, you've had a lot of recent capital activity, so we understand that that amount would be closer to the 50%. But again, what this tells you is you do have a lot of debt, you do have a new utility, you have a lot of upgrades, and you do have a lot of debt on the books. But again, it's healthy, it's nowhere near a concern. I would anticipate going forward that that number would start to come up as you pay down your debt service. Overall, if we look at the utilities, I'd say the utilities are healthy. The utilities have done a good job keeping rates current. They have a strong unrestricted cash position. There's been a lot of activity. We have a new utility building. There's debt taken out. You have a large receivable from TIF for all the TIF projects. I'd say overall the utilities are financially healthy and things look good. Any questions specific to the income statement, the balance sheet, or anything within the financial statements? There's a lot of information in here. There's a lot of notes that describe all this in depth. But if at any time you have specific questions to anything in these financials, certainly please give me a call and we can discuss those items.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the fine work that, once again, Baker Tilly has done for the Plymouth Utilities and gone through their financial position, and it certainly is a strong one and a healthy part of the city. So we appreciate it, and we do like the statement being the best that we can get. So.
And lastly, we
That's
just
good.
want to thank everyone at the utilities, Howard, these individuals put a lot of time that goes into the financial statement audit. When we leave, their job isn't done. There's a lot of work that goes into the financial reporting, a lot of information they provide, and Howard and his team always do an excellent job on getting us everything we need, so we appreciate the effort that they put in as well. So,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the audit report as presented for 2011.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Alder Hanson.
We have a first and a second discussion. Alderperson Jarvis?
Yes, I received the packet of materials related to the financial statements today in the mail. So I don't know if everyone else received theirs today, but usually when there's a more major topic such as this, we ask that this is submitted in our packet that we receive on Saturday, so we can at least have 2 days, at least 2 full days to review, and if we have questions. With that being said, I did not get a chance to thoroughly read this afternoon. And while I know that over the years we've addressed some of the things and that the utility receipt is healthy, I do just want to ask that if we wanted to bring up an agenda item in the utility committee, whether we could bring up the topic as a discussion of this financial statement, or would that be, if this was accepted and filed tonight, would that be unacceptable to do it in the utility committee again?
Director Jurgis, do you want to comment on that? I would maybe offer one suggestion that the council can accept or reject this audit report. We can't change it. It is what it is. Maybe, I'm only reading into what you asked, Alderperson Jarvis. I think in committee, we can go through any recommendations or suggestions and certainly discuss those and try to encourage implementation of some things for the coming year.
Right.
I would say that what is here, you're not gonna change it.
Right. I think that would be a true statement. I just want to make sure I know what the boundaries are in our utility committee, that I understand that a policy topic such as discussing the I don't know how much we give out in terms of debt from now on or something like that. I understand what that means, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear and okay that we got this afternoon. So,
Any other comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Markham.
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Jarvis.
yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Thank you again to Baker Tilly. We appreciate your work and the staff for all the work that's involved. It is very time-consuming, and we have dedicated employees, and we appreciate their efforts as well. Thank you. Item 6, resolution. A resolution regarding deputization of city law enforcement officers by the Sheboygan County Sheriff and accepting certain liability therefore. Chief Tauschek, did you want to maybe summarize the resolution for us briefly?
We're the only law enforcement agency in the county that our officers are not deputized by the sheriff. What this resolution is, Sheriff Preby would deputize all full-time law enforcement officers for the remainder of his term. This came about, the city of Plymouth Police Department is going to be involved with a OWI federal task force, federal money, starting, actually it's been approved already through September of this year and then the following year. And part of that is, we're one of 5 agencies between the Sheriff's Department, the City of Sheboygan, Kohler Falls, and Plymouth, and we'll be working various jurisdictions. This deputization allows us to do that without creating a memorandum of understanding, during each event that we're going to be involved with. Plus, it also, what it does, it makes it a cleaner situation when the Sheriff's Department asks us to assist them outside our jurisdiction. In times, they'll ask us to assist with an accident or something, or an arrest on a traffic stop. As long as we get authorization at that point, will you assist us? Mutual aid kicks in. This would basically eliminate that. And if you also drive around the city, outskirts of the city, some part of roads, some are in the town of Plymouth, some are in the city. At times it can get to be confusing. This also cleans that up. So basically a resolution that you'd be approving that. Sheriff would draft a letter that we would keep on file if the issue ever came up until the end of his term, which is another 2.5 years, and then it would be renewed. We're the only law enforcement agency, like you mentioned earlier, that has not done that yet.
Thank you, Chief. Chair will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution and also stipulating that it is on file in the clerk's office and on our website.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Alder Markham.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Jarvis.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Item 7, Finance and Personnel Committee. Item A, discussion and action regarding the filling of the wastewater treatment plant operator position recommended by the committee on June 26, due to a planned retirement. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the wastewater treatment plant operator position as recommended by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
So moved, Alder Markham.
Second, Williams.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Sedlacek?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Jarvis?
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Item B, discussion and possible action on Department of Public Works Labor Limited Term Employment position. This was discussed this evening at our Finance Committee meeting, and the Finance Committee recommended that we fill this limited term employment position. Chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Alder Hanson.
We have a first and a second. I would maybe ask Director Jurgis to give us a brief summary since we did discuss it tonight.
There is
Director?
there is a memo in the packet, but basically what we're looking at doing is, there is currently an employee off on extended leave, due to personal reasons. That employee, probably will not be coming back. In addition, we are looking at other staffing, in the DPW department, and one of the options is to promote a seasonal employee to an LTE position from September 1st through 2013, and that would be at an hourly rate of $15 an hour. They would not be considered permanent employees, and they would not be eligible for health insurance due to the LTE status. And so what it does is it provides some additional assistance until we work through the issue of the existing employee potentially permanently being no longer with the city of Plymouth, as well as another employee that potentially could look at retirement this fall. And there is a considerable amount of savings to the city, roughly $30,000 in 2013, and over the full 16-month period, it's about a $40,000 savings.
Thank you, Director. We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Hanson?
Yes.
Sedlacek?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
Jarvis?
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Moving on, item 8, revolving loan committee. Discussion and action regarding a revolving loan application from Plymouth Tap LLC, operated by Kevin Federer, 101 East Mill Street, in the amount of $60,000 for property and material purchase and equipment, recommended by the revolving loan committee at its June 20th meeting. Mel Blanc is here tonight to give us a brief summary. As we go through this, when I ask for a motion from the council, I would ask that in the motion, a term of 10 years be part of that motion. Mr. Blanke.
Yes, as you may know, the Sawdust Pub was transferred ownership. Kevin Federer, operating as Plymouth Tap LLC, has purchased that property. Kevin is here today. He has extensive experience in running, yes, Mr. Federer back there, has extensive experience in running such operations, Sheboygan and Sheboygan Falls?
Correct.
And is going to be putting in a significant amount of funding on improvements. I think you're all familiar with the property. It's not that far from here, and the improvements, I think, would be desirable for the city. This would be unusual only in the sense that Mr. Federer is financing the portion that we wouldn't be approving himself. There was discussion last time about people having some skin in the game, it was mentioned, and this time there is significant. He has completed the purchase, but he will be expending significantly more probably than the purchase price in renovating the building. I don't know what documents you have in front of you, but he estimates a total about 160, of which he's looking at 60,000 would be the loan here. Again, he presented his tax returns, and given his experience and given the equity he's placing in the property, number of employees, the committee did recommend that we grant the loan. And again, I'm not sure when the mayor said that, were you looking at a 20-year amortization or 10-year amortization? I'm not,
A 10-year amortization.
okay.
Real
I
estate
believe that's
loan.
what was discussed. And and in that case, we usually do have the, though I do see we did, according to the motion, it was approved with with a balloon after the 10 years as well. But the rate goes up 1% a year after the first 2 years, so it gets to be significant once
Correct.
you get out into that area. Again, he'd be using the funds to fix up the building, including the facade, and to make other significant changes. Mentions a grill. Kevin, is there anything briefly you could tell them about the renovations?
Well, like I said in the meeting previous, it was thrown on my plate a little quicker than I wanted, but the previous owner was so anxious to move along. I have not been over there. I got some of the food items and liquor and the beer and the coolers and everything shut off. I was gonna intend on starting next week pretty heavy on the demo. I'm waiting for a set of plans from the architect. I met with a local plumber about putting new bathrooms in. All that should be coming forward in the next couple of weeks.
And he's also aware that, again, he had purchased the property already, so he has that investment, and we can't advance more money than he has actually invested. The most we can go is 50% on any project. So, assuming, and probably doesn't have much less than that in the purchase invested already with architects and engineering. So, again, our funds will go to the equipment and things like that in the property.
Okay, thank you. Chair, will entertain a motion.
So move Alder Hanson to the 10-year.
10-year, correct, thank you.
Second, Alder Anderson.
Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll, approving the revolving loan fund for $60,000 as indicated.
Anderson.
Yes.
Jarvis.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Thank you, we appreciate your interest in the city of Plymouth.
Thank you.
Item 9, award contract for the 2012 Willow Road reconstruction project, including alternate work to Jassart Brothers Incorporated, De Pere, Wisconsin, in the amount of $731,055. I would ask our utility manager, John McKinnon, to give us a brief summary. We do have a letter from Kapoor and Associates recommending the award as stated. John?
Good evening. Last Thursday, we took bids on the reconstruction of Willow Road. That's from the railroad from the PP Road north, past the railroad tracks, going along. The property fronting it is owned by Plymouth Industrial Development Corporation. We received, I believe, 6 bids on this project. The lowest bid is what you have this evening on your agenda for award, which is to Josser Brothers. The engineer, reviewing the engineer's recommendation is well below the engineer's estimate and fits very well within the $790,000 revolving loan discussion from a previous meeting. The engineer and I join the recommendation on that. I recommend that you do the cul-de-sac, which will be off of Sartori Way. And what's involved there is strictly doing the road portion. The sanitary sewer and water system in that cul-de-sac has already been put in prior years. So it'll help finish out the road system for part of the industrial park that we have on the east side. And with that, the recommendation is to the project, including the alternate for the stated amount. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. Chair will entertain a motion to approve so we can discuss.
So moved, Alder Markham. Second, Sidlacher.
We have a first and a second discussion. Clerk will call the roll.
Hanson.
Yes.
Jarvis.
No.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Moving on, item 10, approve extraterritorial CSM for the George Shellhouse Estate, W5807 Sumac Road. This is recommended by the Plan Commission on July 5th. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the extraterritorial CSM as stated.
So moved. Second, Alder Hanson.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Jarvis.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Sedlacek. Hanson.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Pete did, oh, never mind. Why don't you give that to the clerk, please? Sure. And then we can take care of that, and she can get in touch with you when it's signed. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, great. I can probably have them sign it after. I have to do it till tomorrow, so the first one.
Item 11, tonight, the chair will entertain a motion to delete item 11, as we do not have sufficient numbers required for the redevelopment authority commissioner appointment by the mayor in confirmation.
So moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Sidlacher.
Thank you. All in favor of deleting the item and moving it to the next council meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Item 12, approve 2012-13 alcohol license applications as indicated. Chair will entertain a motion to approve, previously approved by Chief Tauschek and Clerk Huberty.
So moved.
Second by,
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Item 13, approve 2012-13 tavern operator licenses as listed and approved by Chief Tauschek. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the list as indicated.
so moved, Alder Anderson.
Second, Sidlacher.
First and second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Item 14, approve treasurer's report and authorized payment of June vouchers. Clerk Huberty, would you do the treasurer's report, please?
For the month of June, the City of Plymouth beginning balance on May 31st was $38,200.01. Receipts were $936,312.97. Disbursements, $921,691.78, and bringing us to a balance on June 30th of $52,821.20. For the Plymouth Utilities, their balance on May 31st was $69.88. Receipts, $2,872,417.34. Disbursements, $2,872,418.30, and their balance on June 30th was $68.92.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the treasury report and authorize payment of June vouchers.
So moved, Alder Jarvis.
Second, Williams.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Williams,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Jarvis,
Yes.
Sedlacek,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Item 15, discussion and possible recommendation regarding a consent agenda process. I'll ask Director Yurgis for an opening comment and then call on Alderperson Jarvis for a comment as well.
Yeah, in your packet, you have a draft ordinance, and I actually want to start with the last page, which is it says current on it in black writing. This is order of business. And I would draw your attention to Agenda 2. The agenda, well, let's see here. Items may be placed upon the agenda by the mayor, any alderman, the city clerk treasurer, and any other city officer upon request to the city clerk treasurer made and received not later than noon of the third business day preceding such meeting date. No additions shall be made to such agenda thereafter except by consent of the common council. Two things this agenda, or this ordinance does. The first thing, if you go to the front page, into the ordinance, Part B, agenda approval, what this does is it says the city clerk treasurer shall create the agenda with the approval of the director of city services. Prior to publication, the agenda shall be reviewed by the mayor or council president. Typically what's happening is Patty is emailing that out to the mayor, myself, as well as the city attorney. The mayor, alderpersons, or department heads who wish to include items on the agenda shall make their request to the director of city services. So basically, the director of city services position would be viewed as, I guess, the gatekeeper or the filter of agenda items. Further down there, it says the director of city services shall honor all timely requests of the mayor and alderpersons. So in one sense, it creates that the director is the gatekeeper, but at the same time, the mayor, any request by the mayor or alderpersons will still automatically be put on the agenda. That clarifies how the agenda is created since the director of city services position has been created. The other part is the consent agenda. And this is, Part B isn't necessarily what Alderperson Jarvis brought up, but since we were looking at proposing a consent agenda, I am proposing language that clarifies the agenda approval role. But the consent agenda is really what Alderperson Jarvis has proposed. And I'll just read that. The Director of City Services and City Clerk Treasurer are hereby authorized to create a subsection on any common council agenda entitled Consent Agenda, in which the Director of City Services or City Clerk Treasurer shall place matters which in his or her judgment are routine and non-controversial, and which do not require a special vote or action to be taken by the Common Council. No separate discussion or debate shall be permitted on any matter which have been included in the consent agenda. A single motion, seconded and adopted by a majority vote of the Common Council, shall be sufficient to approve, adopt, enact, or otherwise favorably resolve any matter. Later, at such time during a common council meeting when the consent agenda is reached, any alderperson may request removal of any item or part thereof previously included in the consent agenda, and such item or part thereof shall be removed without debate or vote. Any item or part thereof removed from the consent agenda by action of the common council shall be separately considered at the appropriate time during the common council's regular order of business. So what I want to next go to is the sample draft. There is one error in this just sample draft. This is just kind of a sample layout of how it works. There is one error in the draft. Originally, this was done incorporating resolutions and ordinances into old business or new business sections. What actually happened is Those would come after the public hearing, so it would be public hearings, resolutions or ordinances, and all those would still be voted on individually. But at the beginning of the meeting, it would be approval of the agenda, or we could say approval of the consent agenda to clarify it. There would be a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, and then when you get to item number 6, there would be a single motion and a second to approve all 5 of those items in this instance. So for example, the minutes, the treasurer's reports, licenses, other reports would all be approved with one motion instead of requiring a motion and approval for A, B, C, D, and E. So the previous items in the council agenda, we'll just look at a couple we just talked about, item number 12, item number 13, and item number 14. Those are example of routine items that could all be placed underneath the consent agenda section, and there could be one motion approving all 3 of those rather than taking individual roll calls. At the same time, at the beginning of the meeting, before the council approves the agenda, any council member could say, I would like to vote on number 14, the treasurer's report, separately tonight, and then that would subsequently happen later in the meeting, so that would be taken out of the consent agenda. So what the consent agenda does is it speeds up the meeting, allows routine items to be approved with a single motion rather requiring multiple motions to approve. That's what the consent agenda does, and the other part is it clarifies how agendas are put together and approved, being that the Director of City Services position was created. So I guess with that, I would turn it over to Alderperson Jarvis to see if she has comments or things to add.
Thank you for the thorough explanation. I really don't have much to add, except that I think this is a good measure. I think it streamlines things. Many other municipalities use this type of consent agenda system. It still affords the opportunity, if there is something that would come up that you would like to pull out and discuss. In the past couple of years, the only thing that out of these routine type items, it's been the uncollectible amounts from the utility. And so if like Alder Faller or whoever feels that there's a question on a particular one, then he can pull that out and then we can discuss it. So I just think that this is a nice way to streamline things. It's routine and it's usually non-controversial. Just to add 16 on our current agenda, that would be another one, I believe, that those items would also fall under the consent, as well as some of the utility voucher agenda items. So, thank you for consideration.
Any comments, questions? Alderman Hanson.
I contacted Board Member Tim St. Clair, and he was on the board before the consent agenda was done for our school board, and is done now, and he said it smoothed things out for it and made the meetings more efficient, so I would concur that this is and one person can bring up an agenda, if you want to talk about something, one person can do it and have the discussion, so it doesn't take that away, so I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Other comments? Thank you very much. We appreciate the work that went into this, and it does look rather complete, as drafts can be sometimes. Certainly, if we find something that is missing, we certainly can change the ordinance at a later date, if that is deemed necessary. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda process as indicated.
What would happen is this would come to, we would move this to the July 31st council
Okay.
meeting for formal adoption. If the council wants to consider this, if the council isn't interested in making the change,
So
we
then
probably
we would,
wouldn't bring it back. But if, I'm basically looking for, you can make a recommendation to bring this back to the July 31st for official ordinance action, if the group wants to.
that, we could put that in the form of a motion.
I would like to move that we bring this item to our next council meeting.
Second.
Which would be on the 31st. We have a first and a second. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Thank you for your work, Director Yurgis and Alderperson Jarvis. Moving on, other business. We don't have a consent agenda, so we'll go through the process tonight. You can see where I was going with that one, I hope. Okay. Other business, item A, building report for June 2012, 40 permits issued with an estimated total of $808,011. Item B, June and July management reports acknowledged for filing. Item C, minutes acknowledged for filing as indicated. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Alder Jarvis.
Second, Morcom.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?